Okay, let's unpack this. In this deep dive, we're zeroing in on some incredibly important testimony in the ongoing legal proceedings involving Sean Combs.
hmm
Specifically, we're focusing on the account of a witness who testified under the pseudonym Mia.
And the source material we're working with here, it really gives us a window into that testimony.
Yeah.
You've got excerpts from news reports covering both her time on the stand for prosecution, that's, direct testimony, and then how the defense approached their cross-examination.
Right.
It's a crucial stack of information covering her time working for Combs and the very serious allegations she made.
Yeah, based on these reports, Mia, who was a former employee, she presented some pretty harrowing allegations. And you see the defense in response really trying to challenge her credibility, particularly by bringing up her past actions and, her social media posts. It creates a really high-tension dynamic right there in the courtroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to guide you through what Mia told the court, based strictly on what these sources report. We're going to cover her description of what the work environment was like.
Okay.
The alleged physical and verbal abuse she described, the alleged sexual assault she testified to, what she said she witnessed happening to Cassie Ventura, drug-related allegations,
Right.
and then, critically, how the defense worked to present a counter-narrative using her past actions and social media footprint. We're just reporting what the sources say was presented in court, giving you the key nuggets from both sides of that testimony.
Okay, let's jump right in. Let's try and understand who Mia was in this dynamic, what was her role, and how long did she work for Combs?
So, according to the testimony reported in our sources, Mia was employed by Sean Combs from 2009 to 2017. She started as a personal assistant, but her role evolved. She later became the director of development and acquisitions for Revolt Films.
Okay.
She also mentioned having previous assistant jobs before this one.
And how did she feel when she first got this personal assistant position? Was she excited or?
Oh, yeah, she testified she was incredibly enthusiastic, said she was so excited and just so excited, so nervous and just really eager about landing the role.
That initial excitement, though? Sounds like it met a very different reality when she was actually in the job.
That's precisely what she described. She characterized the environment as chaotic, toxic, exciting. It was a place where, she testified, the highs were really high and the lows were really, really low.
And what determined that environment? What made it high or low?
Mia testified that the entire atmosphere depended on Puff's mood. Simple as that, apparently.
She detailed some really demanding aspects of the job, too. What did that actually entail day to day?
Well, she described being asked to do like 17,000 things simultaneously. Tasks ranging from simple physical things like cracking his knuckles to, complex stuff like doing his taxes.
Wow.
And she also testified there were times she might have to stand beside him for 22 hours just doing nothing, just being available.
Just standing there.
Yeah. It was a constant state of needing to, anticipating his whims, needs, and moods, and requiring her to stay in PD eyesight. It paints a picture of just immense pressure and unpredictability.
That level of demand, it sounds like it would leave very little room for a personal life or any privacy.
According to her testimony, that was exactly the case. While she kept an apartment in New York, she lived primarily in Combs' various homes.
Oh.
And she testified she wasn't allowed to lock her bedroom door, recounting his alleged words, "This is my house. No locks, no doors." She also said she couldn't leave whenever she wished and needed permission for personal things, like seeing friends or family. It speaks to a high level of control based on her account.
And sleep deprivation? Was that a frequent issue?
She testified that going without sleep happened all the time. The longest period she mentioned without sleep was 5 straight days.
5 days.
Yeah.
And for a time, she was apparently the only assistant. How did she describe managing everything then?
She testified she didn't have time to feel, but insane. Just insane.
Okay. Moving into some of the more difficult parts of her testimony now, Mia described Puff as being violent.
Yes. She testified about experiencing violence herself. She said he was violent with her, and that there were instances where she was chased and hid when she reacted to situations.
And she gave several specific examples of these alleged physical incidents, didn't she?
She did. She testified, he's thrown things at me. He's thrown me against the wall. He's thrown me into a pool. He's thrown a book at my head.
Okay.
She recounted an alleged incident where he threw a computer at her head because the Wi-Fi wasn't working, saying something like, "I don't care if you have to call Bill Gates."
Wow.
A computer.
Yeah. And another alleged incident involved him throwing spaghetti aggressively at her after she asked for just a moment to change her tampon before doing an IHOP run.
Spaghetti.
Yes. She testified about having blood dripping down my leg when he allegedly threw the spaghetti, cursed, and told her to leave. That's intense. What about the verbal abuse she testified about?
Well, she testified he would start screaming and curse at her, going on these really long, extended rants about how incompetent and stupid I was.
Mm.
She recalled specific names he allegedly called her, such as, "You better learn to walk on water like Jesus be."
Oof.
And later, in an email she sent to a bodyguard after a confrontation, she referred to him as Psycho D and said, "He's so mean," according to her testimony. So this verbal aspect seems to have been a persistent part of the alleged environment.
And she testified this behavior also impacted her career opportunities. He held things over her.
Yes, exactly. She testified he would condition opportunities on his mood. He might say things like, one day you can do whatever you want at any of my companies, but then threaten to take away television credits or scrap her projects.
Like her comedy show.
Right, including that comedy TV show that was sold to ABC but ultimately didn't air. It seems the alleged control really extended to her professional aspirations, too.
There was one notable incident she detailed in St. Barth's, New Year's Eve 2010.
Yeah, that one stood out. She was called into his cabin to count money and testified he yelled at her for being too slow, called her a bee, and chased her out. She was actually taken to shore by the yacht crew,
Oh, wow.
but then ordered back via walkie-talkie. She testified she didn't want to return, but felt I had to, obeying his orders, and she was suspended after this.
So even when she got away, she was pulled back in. That speaks volumes about the power dynamic she described.
It really does.
There was also an alleged incident involving workout clothes.
That was March 2011. She testified she laid out clothes for him, but he didn't notice, and just began cursing and ranting about the lack of options. She said something violent happened afterward, though she couldn't recall the specifics.
Okay.
Later, she received an email saying he was firing her. And she also mentioned sending that email to a bodyguard, calling him Psycho D and bat crazy, and asking for a heads up before they came back.
So based on her testimony, these suspensions happened multiple times. It wasn't just the St. Barth's incident.
No, she testified she was suspended several times. Often, she said, it was pretty much when I reacted to these violent situations.
So reacting got her punished.
That's what her testimony suggests, yes. A consequence for not remaining passive based on her account.
Okay. Shifting now to even more sensitive testimony, Mia also spoke about alleged sexual assaults. She testified she absolutely did not want to discuss these, but felt a moral obligation.
That's correct. She said she felt she had to tell the truth because when you're scared into silence, these things continue to happen to others. She referred to the alleged assaults as the most traumatizing, worst thing that has ever happened to me.
That's incredibly strong language.
It is. She testified she feared physical harm or damage to her reputation and felt she couldn't tell him no about anything, really highlighting the alleged power imbalance she perceived.
She described an alleged incident at the Plaza Hotel, didn't she? Around the time of Combs' 40th birthday party.
Yes. She testified this happened a few months into her job. She was speaking alone with him in the penthouse kitchen. She said he praised her work, mentioned them working more closely.
Okay.
And then she testified he gave her 2 shots that affected her unusually strongly. While she was standing against a wall, she testified he got close, put his arm next to her head, leaned in as if to kiss her, and put his other hand up the side of her dress.
And she testified she didn't want this.
She testified explicitly she did not want him to kiss her or put his hand up her dress.
There was also an alleged incident involving a bunk bed.
Yes, she testified about that. She said she was asleep in her room in the Beverly Grove Drive home on the bottom bunk in a room where the door, remember, could not be locked.
Right. No locks.
She testified she woke to the weight of a person on top of me, alleging it was Combs. She testified he told her, shh, and used one hand to get his pants off.
Oh, my God.
She testified he put himself inside me. She described her reaction as just froze and felt terrified and confused and ashamed and scared. It's a very vivid description of alleged trauma.
And another alleged incident in a closet.
Yes. She testified she was packing in a bedroom closet when Combs entered, stood right in front of her, had his penis out, grabbed her head, and put it in there.
She testified he forced her head down.
She testified he grabbed her head and put it there, yes. She testified he put his penis in her mouth. She said she felt like trash, scared and ashamed, and she testified she did not want to give him oral sex.
And her general statement about sexual assault, was it just these incidents?
Based on her testimony, she alleged sexual assault happened more than once and that he made other unwanted sexual advances as well.
Okay. Beyond her own alleged experiences, Mia also testified extensively about witnessing alleged abuse against Cassie Ventura. She said she and Ventura became like sisters.
Yeah, she testified she spent as much time as allowed with Ventura and was actually given tasks related to her, keeping tabs, accompanying her, basically serving as a way for Combs to contact her.
So she was supposed to watch her.
That seems to be the implication. She also stated that if she and Ventura did something without Combs' permission, something really scary would happen, which reinforces the alleged control over both women.
How did she characterize the relationship between Combs and Ventura based on what she saw?
She described it as a cycle of highs and lows, unequal and equal, toxic, abusive towards her.
Ah.
That mix again.
Right. And what specific acts of violence did she testify to witnessing against Ventura?
She testified she saw Combs attack her, throw her on the ground, crack her head open, and chase her.
Yeah.
She noted that Ventura did not fight back, just, put her arms up.
She mentioned one incident that echoed earlier testimony from a stylist, right? At Ventura's LA apartment.
Yes, that one. Mia testified Combs arrived banging on the door, very angry, screaming at Ventura about drinking, and threw Ventura to the ground. Mia said she tried to intervene, and Combs threw her against the wall so quick and so easily, leading her to realize the real danger. She testified Combs allegedly slammed Ventura's head into the corner of the bed, resulting in gushing blood and a pretty thick scar.
Wow.
And she testified she saw his eyes turn black, describing it like he was looking through her. That detail about his eyes turning black is chilling.
Very. She also testified about an incident echoing testimony from a makeup artist, this one at Prince's Grammy party.
She testified she defied an order to stay with Ventura at the hotel and went with her to the party. When Combs arrived and saw them, Mia testified Puff caught Cass running through the house or bushes and began to attack her on the ground before Prince's security stepped in.
And Mia faced consequences for that.
Yes. She said she was suspended the next day for being insubordinate by going against his orders.
And at the Cannes Film Festival, anything there?
She testified she witnessed Combs talking to Ventura with his teeth clenched but in an aggressive way and actually digging his nails into her arm.
Just digging his nails in. She also recounted instances where Ventura allegedly tried to hide or flee from the alleged abuse.
She did. She described an incident in Turks and Caicos where Ventura ran screaming into Mia's room saying, "You gotta help me, he's gonna kill me." Mia described it as the most terrified scream.
Oh, gosh.
They blockaded the door and ran out the back to the beach running so fast. Another time, while allegedly escaping an irate Combs on the beach, they reportedly hopped on paddleboards and paddled way out to sea.
On paddleboards.
Yeah. He apparently screamed from the beach, and she testified the weather turned bad, leaving them with this awful choice: face Mother Nature or go back to face Puff. It's such a dramatic image of alleged desperation.
Absolutely. She also testified about Ventura's alleged reluctance regarding hotel nights.
Right. Mia testified that Ventura would express reluctance, saying things like "uck," and appeared visually upset, nervous, sometimes even experiencing stomach issues at the prospect of going to hotels with Combs.
And after these hotel stays, Mia testified she had a specific role: cleaning up.
Yeah, she testified it was standard procedure for her to clean the rooms before housekeeping arrived.
To prevent leaks.
Exactly, to prevent potential leaks to the media. This involved packing items like lotions, oils, condoms, candles, both cheap ones like Glade and expensive ones like Diptyque.
Okay.
She described the rooms as destroyed, messy, a nightmare. Said she saw candle wax, wet towels, broken glass, and sometimes blood.
Blood.
Which she testified Combs allegedly referred to as period blood. She testified Ventura allegedly expected these freak-offs even while on her period. Staff reportedly had a name for the cleanup: man down.
Man down. Wow.
She also mentioned an incident at the London hotel where Ventura answered the door in a bright blue wig, looking like she was struggling. Mia asked if she was okay, and Ventura allegedly replied, no, I'm okay, I'm good, before closing the door. It provides such specific details about the alleged aftermath.
Given the severity of everything she testified to witnessing and experiencing, the question is, why didn't Mia call the police? Did she address that?
She did. She justified that she believed Puff's authority was above the police. Just flat out.
Hmm.
She also noted this was years before social media really took off, before #MeToo gave examples of people successfully challenging powerful figures.
Right. Different time.
And she testified she was taught confidentiality, loyalty, felt she was supposed to protect him, mentioned people allegedly trying to blackmail him.
Okay. Mia also included some drug-related allegations in her testimony. What were those?
Well, she testified that Combs allegedly gave her drugs, including MDMA. She said he told her she was now a part of the Breakfast Club,
The Breakfast Club.
which she described as this close group that partied through breakfast, like a cool kids club, you know?
Yeah.
She had also previously testified about an alleged incident where Combs forced her to take ketamine at Burning Man.
Right, I remember that. And she testified about witnessing him taking drugs at various times.
Yes, at what she characterized as inappropriate times, including apparently during a board meeting and while appearing on Chelsea Handler's TV talk show,
During a board meeting.
according to her testimony, yeah.
Where did he allegedly keep these drugs?
She testified he kept them in a Louis Vuitton pouch, which he allegedly called sort of like a traveling medicine cabinet.
A traveling medicine cabinet. And what were her thoughts at the time about his alleged drug use? Did she say?
She testified she remembered thinking, when was I going to have to pull him aside and tell him, you're a little crazy at the moment?
Okay, now let's turn to the defense's strategy during cross-examination. This focused heavily on Mia's social media activity and other past actions, right?
Yeah, this is where the tension really ramped up in the courtroom reports. Defense attorney Brian Steele, according to these sources, used Mia's own social media posts and actions to challenge whether her testimony about being severely traumatized actually aligned with her public presentation during her employment.
Okay, so the core argument was she misrepresented her feelings about working for Combs.
That was the angle, yes.
Yeah.
Trying to show a disconnect.
And the defense presented specific posts from her social media. What were some examples?
Oh, yeah. They showed several. There was a post from October 2013, a photo of her and Combs in a coffee shop, captioned, just #one guy on the Forbes list getting me a vanilla latte. No big deal.
Okay.
Steele reportedly pointed out this was around 4 years after the first alleged sexual assault Mia testified about.
Timing was key. And there was a significant post from November 4th, 2013.
That one seemed really crucial for the defense. It featured a photo of Mia in a hospital gown with Combs posed as a doctor, and the caption included, "Thank you for always letting me give birth to my dreams."
Okay, related to a video.
Yeah, Mia testified it was related to a funny video directed by Andy Samberg. But critically, Steele pointed out this was exactly 4 years to the day after she testified Combs first sexually assaulted her at the Plaza Hotel.
Exactly 4 years.
And he asked if she chose the image, which she confirmed she did. You can see how the defense is trying to highlight that apparent inconsistency.
Definitely. What about another photo, something with a tutu?
Right. Steele commented that in the photo, it looks like he's holding his private part. Mia responded, "If that's what you see, I guess so," and confirmed she chose that image, adding, "She didn't want my family and friends to know the misery I was in."
Okay, so she gave context there. And a repost from November 10th, 2013.
That was a reposted photo of people in Combs' backyard pool with the caption, "The reason I never made it out last night." Steele reportedly asked if this was voluntary posting, and she confirmed it was.
The defense also used birthday wishes she posted for Combs, right?
Yes, multiple times.
Yeah.
Notably, one from November 4, 2014, which Steele again highlighted, was 5 years after the alleged first assault. The post read, "Thank you for being the good kind of crazy. Thank you for being a friend and bringing friends into my life."
And how did Mia respond to that one?
But she testified she didn't recognize that date as like a celebration date.
Yeah.
Said she tried to forget the trauma, shoved it down. There was another post from November 4th, 2015, his next birthday, calling Combs legend king bad boy for life and saying, "Thank you for showing me the path to Pluto and beyond." The defense is clearly drawing a sharp contrast between these public messages and her testimony of trauma.
Absolutely. They also presented a scrapbook she made for his 45th birthday in 2014.
Yes, a physical scrapbook. It included a handwritten card, "Happy 45th birthday, Puff Daddy," with a note reading, "Sometimes life goes by at catastrophic speeds where you never get to live in and enjoy now. I hope on this day you get to sit back and take it all in." Came with old magazine articles, apparently.
And Steele's questioning on that.
Reportedly very direct, asking if she wrote this to the man she now said ruined her life.
And the Burning Man post, how did that play in?
That was from 2015. "Watching the man burn with the man who introduced me to it all. We love you." Steele reportedly referenced her earlier testimony that Combs forced her to take drugs there and asked if she was thanking him for another incredible experience.
So framing it as gratitude, contrasting with forced drug use.
Exactly. That whole line of questioning repeatedly pressed Mia on how the person she praised and called a legend in these posts could be the same person she testified had traumatized her, physically and sexually.
He asked her directly about that disconnect.
Repeatedly, according to reports. Asked how she could find any goodness in him after the abuse she described, how she could make a scrapbook for the man who allegedly ruined her life, why promote someone who allegedly stole her happiness.
Wow.
Why make a scrapbook if she was allegedly assaulted and her sister, Ventura, was allegedly brutalized? He asked if she just put aside the alleged assaults, the sleepless nights, the being gotten on top of.
He really pushed her on it.
Yes. And he also directly questioned if it wasn't true that Combs never had unwanted, non-consensual, forcible sexual contact. And regarding texts she sent about contemplating suicide when she lost her job, Steele reportedly asked something like, "Isn't this great? You're away from your abuser." A very direct challenge to her narrative.
So how did Mia respond to this barrage? To these specific examples in that line of questioning?
Well, she acknowledged the posts were real, they were legitimate, but testified the sentiment expressed wasn't always genuine. She characterized the whole environment and the need to maintain appearances as psychological abuse.
Okay.
She explained that she was young and manipulated and eager to survive, and that she was searching for that kind of approval from Combs. She described the relationship dynamics flat out as an abusive relationship.
Did she talk about therapy?
Yes. She testified she is unraveling a lot of this now in therapy, and that during her time there, nobody was there to say these things that were happening were wrong. There was nobody around us that ever even flinched at his behavior.
So a normalization of it all.
That's what she suggested. She explained that when the highs were high, the good was good, and because the people around Combs were the only people I was around, so that was my life. You had to promote it.
Had to promote it.
She called it a very confusing cycle of ups and downs, adding that she wanted to highlight the highs on social media and, didn't think people typically posted negative things on Instagram back then. It really highlights the core tension the defense is exploring. That difference between external presentation and internal experience, especially in these alleged high control or abusive dynamics, as Mia frames it.
And her response about the scrapbook, specifically given the alleged abuse of Ventura.
She pushed back there, testified, "It's a lot more complicated than the way you frame that. Ask any abuse victim's advocate, and they could explain it to you much better than I could."
Interesting response. And the suicide texts after losing her job? How did she explain that reaction if he was her abuser?
She clarified that, yeah, in hindsight, being away from him is fantastic, but at the time, losing the job felt like the worst thing ever, because working for him was the only world I knew for 24 hours a day for 8 years. Overwhelmingly horrific, and it felt like it was being ripped away without explanation.
So it was her whole world collapsing.
That's how she framed it. She affirmed that her testimony in court about the alleged sexual contact was the truth. And concerning forgetting trauma, like Ventura's alleged head slam, she testified, "You don't forget that. You're punished for reacting to it. You're terrified to bring it up again." Her response consistently focused on the complexities of surviving that alleged environment.
Okay. Mia also testified about contacts she received after leaving Combs' employment, specifically after Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was filed in November 2023.
Yes. She testified that Combs' bodyguard, identified as D-Rock, reached out to her. Text exchanges were reportedly shown in court, including one from Mia that read, DROC, "Hi, how are you? I miss you, SOFMUCH. Ah.
Okay, so initially friendly, and the subsequent phone call she testified about. What happened there?
She said the call started normally, but then D-Rock allegedly shifted the conversation to the lawsuit, saying something like, Puff and Cass would just fight like a normal couple.
And Mia's reaction?
She testified she was skeptical of that framing because she felt D-Rock had witnessed the violence firsthand.
Did she anticipate hearing from Combs directly after that?
Yes. She testified that D-Rock eventually told her Combs would call. Mia said she thought, oh my gosh, it's not going to stop. Another message from D-Rock later reportedly stated, your boy said to call you. He doesn't want or need you to do anything.
Interesting phrasing. Did Combs message her directly?
She did reportedly receive direct messages from Combs in February 2024. On February 4, one message read, Hey Mia, it's Puff. Please let me know when you get 10 minutes to talk.
And her response?
Mia testified she ignored it because she was terrified. Then on February 7, she received another. Hey, I don't want to be blowing up your phone. Just needed to talk to you for 10 minutes. Just need my memory jogged on some things. You were my right hand for years, so I just need to speak to you to remember who was even around me. And it would be good to hear your voice.
Jog my memory.
She testified she ignored this one too, stating she knew it was a front.
The prosecution reportedly intends to present evidence suggesting this is part of a pattern of alleged influence attempts.
Yes. Sources indicate the prosecution plans to introduce evidence that Combs allegedly used similar methods to influence the testimony of another witness, referred to as Jane. This reportedly involves thinly veiled references to potentially paying for her home if she stayed silent,
Wow.
and texts allegedly sent to his chief of staff about paying Jane's rent after having a conversation with her.
So potentially linking conversations to payments.
That seems to be the alleged connection the prosecution wants to make.
And another message from D-Rock in February 2024 was also brought up. Something about sending her something.
Yes, Mia testified that D-Rock sent a message saying, "Let me send you something," which Mia testified she understood to mean an offer of money. So these exchanges, according to her testimony and the prosecution's alleged angle, suggest potential attempts to manage witness testimony.
Stepping back from the specific incidents for a moment, why did Mia decide to testify at all, given how difficult she described it all being?
She testified, again, that she felt a moral obligation to speak out. She believed that being scared into silence allows these kinds of things to continue happening to others.
And what kind of lasting impact has this whole experience allegedly had on her life, her ability to work?
Mia testified that she hasn't been able to hold a job since leaving Combs' employment. She attributed this to what she described as complex, severe PTSD.
PTSD.
Yes, stating that she gets triggered by normal workplace situations, experiencing an overwhelming sense of fear of being in trouble. And she testified that Puff caused these feelings.
Okay, looking at the defense's overall position, just to reiterate, as reported in the sources.
Right, Combs' legal team maintains that while he may have committed other crimes, they can see that possibility he is not guilty of the specific felony charges he faces. Sex trafficking by force, transportation for prostitution, racketeering conspiracy.
And he denies the sexual assault allegations.
He has pleaded not guilty and denies sexually assaulting anyone. His lawyer has also previously stated he was part of the swinger lifestyle and denied the specific charges. It's important to keep their stated position in mind as we review all this testimony.
Definitely. There's also an external development reported that touched on the trial peripherally, a comment from President Donald Trump.
Yes, that came up. President Trump reportedly commented on the possibility of pardoning Combs if he were convicted. He was quoted as saying he'd certainly look at the facts if he thought someone was mistreated.
Okay.
He noted that he hadn't been asked about it, but people were thinking about it. He also reportedly said he hasn't spoken to Combs in years, and their relationship kind of busted up after he went into politics.
Right. And we're just relaying what the source reports he said there. No political commentary from us.
That's exactly. Just reporting the reported statement.
So what is the current status of the trial? Where do things stand now?
Well, week 3 of testimony concluded with Mia still on the stand. Her cross-examination is set to resume next week. Reports indicate that 3 full weeks of testimony from a total of 21 witnesses has been heard so far.
Okay, so more to come. As we wrap up this deep dive then, we've really explored the complex and often incredibly difficult testimony of this witness identified as Mia. We've seen the alleged details she presented about the work environment, the physical and verbal abuse, the sexual assaults, and witnessing alleged abuse against Cassie Ventura.
And then that intense cross-examination where the defense used her own social media posts, her own actions, to really challenge that narrative of trauma.
While Mia explained those actions as a response to alleged psychological abuse, a need to survive, a need to gain approval in that specific context she described.
Exactly. Her account detailed these specific alleged incidents, described a work environment she called toxic and completely dependent on one person's mood.
Right.
And highlighted the immense challenges, as she saw them, of navigating that alleged power dynamic. The defense countered by presenting her public face during that time, trying to portray a different reality.
What really stands out here for you listening is how this testimony and the challenge to it brings into focus the complexities of power dynamics, particularly in the workplace. How individuals might cope with or outwardly present their experiences in high control or public-facing situations, and just the sheer difficulty of reconciling someone's external appearance with their internal reality, especially when abuse is alleged.
And this raises a really important question, I think, for you to consider. How does someone's outward presentation, whether it's on social media, maybe through actions taken just to survive, or simply keeping up appearances, how does that potentially diverge from their inner experience,
Yeah.
especially in the context of reported abusive or high-control relationships?
Mm.
What does this alleged gap between appearance and experience tell us about human behavior, about survival, and maybe the different ways trauma can manifest or be coped with externally? Something to definitely keep in mind as these proceedings continue.